Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome once again to Honest HR Nitrous. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the live stream I do a couple of times a week where you can talk to me and you can ask me questions about job search and anything you're wondering about or you're struggling with, this kind of thing. But we do it with a little bit of a twist here. We're not talking about the theory about how this stuff works. We're talking about how this stuff works in the real world, okay? The reality, the gritty reality of this stuff. Okay, that's what we're talking about. And today, this is episode 150 of Honest HR Nitrous. This episode is called Job Seekers, You Lose. So we're talking about some common pain points for a lot of job seekers out there right now. Let's discuss those, how they actually work. And after that, we'll be turning it over to questions. So I don't have an agenda. I don't have any pre-planned thing to talk about. I'm here simply to answer your questions, respond to whatever you guys want to talk about within this world of job search and job postings and networking and hiring and all the stuff surrounding that, careers, that kind of stuff. First, a shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members and Patreons. You guys are awesome. Thank you for your support. And also to my super thanks donors. Those are really nice to get. And finally to you, my viewers and participants. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. I see we got 9 people here already. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so job seekers, you lose. What does this mean? Well, there's several stuff that is kind of pissing everybody off out in the job market right now. Things like fake jobs. Okay, you may know about fake jobs. It's a job posting. It looks like a real job. Problem is they aren't actually hiring, right? So you could apply to it and nobody ever calls you back. Or you could even get an interview, but you don't get an offer. They don't actually hire you. Okay, so there's all manner of reason for why you might see this. And now fake jobs, I believe, have surpassed 30%. Of all the jobs that you see, 30% of them are fake. That's my understanding. We can ask ChatGPT, get some quick figures on that, I suppose. But this is, I think, as I understand it, the number one most demoralizing issue that job seekers have. Really, because it's really a smokescreen. It's really not that big of a deal because all the jobs that you see in the posted job market, that's only like 15% of all the jobs that are actually out there. You can get the others, you can access them. You just don't do it like this. But yeah, the issues that are creating these run anywhere between outright fraud, like it's a scam on one end of things, and on the other end of things, it's a signal that employers are trying to send to their stakeholders, to their investors and owners and other people that are likely to invest in them. That we're successful. They want to seem successful. So they post a lot of jobs, and that gives the illusion that they're growing. The implication is that they're hiring, they need more people because they've got so much work they can't do it with their existing people. That's the mechanism that's driving that. But there's many things in between. Sometimes they are just actually, putting out like a sort of default thing saying that we're looking. And if someone comes along that's particularly wonderful, then, we're always looking for people. We could hire them. But, not necessarily. We're not necessarily needing to fill this job right now. It's just sort of like a general sort of thing that we're always looking for people. And then other more nefarious reasons are they're doing research on the job market. They want to see who's out there, how many people, what amount of money they're prepared to work for, what skills they're providing for that money, things like this. They want to just sort of test the waters of what's going on out there. So they put out a job posting and they let the job seekers come to them, and they don't actually give them a job, but they just sort of take their information and tabulate it and crunch the numbers and say, oh, that's what's going on, right? So there's all manner of reasons why they're doing fake jobs, but the bottom line is that you see over 30% of jobs are now fake. That means that they're not actually being filled. Either it's a complete smokescreen or something's iffy about it. So that's a lot of wasted effort for job seekers. You're like applying to all these jobs and you're not getting any results for them. It's really stupid. And you can see this when you go to places like Indeed and LinkedIn and you see the same jobs being like, posted again and again and again and again, and they say it's like urgent, but then they've had the posting up months and months, So that's kind of your first tip off right there. It's probably a fake job. And then we get to the elephant in the room, the irony about this whole business, which is that posted jobs, like I say, almost like a mantra on this channel, posted jobs are not the only jobs that are out there. In fact, most jobs are not posted. How many times have I done it on this channel where I've done this thing? I'll do it once again for the hell of it. If you guys, are seeing this for the first time. Of all the jobs that are out there right now that, one could get, what percentage of them are actually posted? Right? Hopefully everybody knows this. Okay, roughly 20 to 30% of jobs are actually posted. I've always maintained it's something like 15 to 20%. But here's the thing, 70 to 80% of jobs are never publicly advertised. So most of them are not posted. Now, this is good news and bad news. The good news is that all the jobs that you're seeing out there, that's only, according to this, 20 or 30, I'd say it's more like 15 to 20. But the point is that you're only seeing a tiny subset of all the jobs that are out there, right? The vast majority of them are not posted. So you see this is only 15, 20%. There's many more. You could get them. They're available to you. It's just that you have to go through a different channel to get those, okay? Now, this is what I've always marveled over. Like, this is common knowledge. This is an open secret. Everyone, kind of knows this. But yet, for example, when I talk about how to get those jobs, everybody tunes out. I don't understand it. Like, nobody wants to talk about what you actually have to do to pursue those. I'm not sure why. There's a tiny subset of people that thinks it's like a conspiracy theory. It's not actually true. Okay, fair enough. I don't know if I can really make any headway with those people. There's other people that think it's just another form of nepotism. People hiring their friends and family because they're their friends and family. Well, that's not what it is, but I don't think I can get anywhere with those people if you've just made up your mind about this. What it is, in fact, is this is the number one way employers like to hire, because it produces better results than posting a job, and it's cheaper and it's quicker for them and presumably for the person that they're hiring, the candidate. So that's why employers have always done this, and it really looks like they're going to continue to do it for quite a while longer, until something changes. But this is why they like it. They like, this is a better process. When someone when either yourself, if you're the hiring manager, or someone close to you, like your trusted employee or something, recommend someone to you, they say, hey, I know this person. They're really good. You really should check them out. Shall I tell them to send you a resume? That carries a lot of weight. You know what I mean? And the other thing is that it's quick, right? So it's a very quick way of getting someone that's probably going to work out. Not necessarily, but probably. The odds are good, right? As opposed to posting like a help wanted sign and then taking applications from total strangers off the street. That's what like a job posting is. You get axe murderers, you get people that are insane, you get people that have falsified their entire resume, including their name, right? You know what I mean? Like that's what you're sorting through, right? So it's no surprise that they're looking for a better method, and they found a better method. Now, the good news for people, I just want to say this one thing, and then I'll continue with my rundown of all the reasons, the pain points. What the hell was I saying? The thing about, everything I've said so far, it sounds like you need to know them, right? It seems like, I just have to have known that person and they need to know me. We have to go way back together. That's not true. you can shortcut that process by reaching out to them, right? Now, they're not posting a job, so you don't know if they're hiring or not. And if they're hiring, you can't see that they're hiring because it's not done in the view of the public, right? So the thing is, if you reach out to an employer and say, hey, if ever you're hiring, consider me. I do this really well. I know that you employ a lot of people who do that same thing. So if ever you're looking for someone who can do that, right here, I live close by. I know about your company. I'd love to work for you or with you, whatever. Right? Some version of that. Like that's basically what you're saying. And, now they know you. That's the thing, right? If you've met them, even better. But even if you haven't, they kind of know you. No one told you to reach out to them. It's not part of any process when they haven't posted a job, right? You don't even know if they are hiring. It's just you decided to do this of your own initiative, right? Now, if you go even further and you go down, you meet them or you go and talk to them, whatever. That's another thing. That even further solidifies it. But even just doing this, you are now someone that they know of. You are a connection. Like, hey, I know someone, you know what I mean? So that's the idea. So that's how you can jump into this process. It's the simplest thing you can do, and it's the easiest way to jump into this process. So anyway, we can get into that later if people want to. But coming back to the pain points here, okay? So anyway, we covered that. So that's the hidden job market. So that's a big pain point. Applying online doesn't work. People are seeing that more because of two things. Number one, the continued rise of fake jobs and the current economy. Now, the current economy isn't terrible, but it's not exactly booming. Things are kind of slowing down a bit, right? A lot of companies are very cautious for quite a while, like in the last 9 months. A lot of people have expected a big AI bubble to burst. I honestly don't know what's going on with that, because just when we thought it was about to pop, we had the whole Iran thing. So I don't know. I think it still is liable, but it's been pushed to the side for a second. I'm just going to finish this and then we'll get to questions. Pain point number 3. A lot of people notice that they're putting some pretty weird stuff in job postings, right? The classic example is saying entry-level jobs require tons of experience, right? Which is a contradiction in terms. It doesn't make any sense. Either it's entry-level or it's not. So if it requires experience, then by definition, it's not entry-level, right? So it's a total contradiction. If you've noticed this, you're absolutely correct. It's a contradiction. It can't be both. These things are mutually exclusive. So if in fact the requirements are legitimate and they are requiring people to have experience, then it's not an entry-level job. So they're falsifying what they're saying. If it is an entry-level job and what they're saying is that it's nice if you were to have experience, which is a lot of times what's going on, right? Then that kind of makes sense, but they're not phrasing it that way, so it's a little deceptive. Now, you can kind of almost understand their situation, okay? Because if they post a job and they get 1,000 applicants to that job, they can afford to be a little selective and say, well, we need this borderline unreasonable thing, and we need this borderline unreasonable thing. And what that does is now the amount of applicable people that applied for it go from 1,000 all the way down to about 5. So it's a little more clear-cut who you would interview, right? So a lot of times that's what they're doing, okay? But still, if you're young, if you're relatively new to this, you're reacting to what you see in front of you, it says entry-level, but they also claim to require experience. You're confused and annoyed. You got that hot feeling in your head, and I don't blame you. Another thing that people complain about today, which is true, is salary opacity or compensation opacity. A lot of times they will not put the salary range on a job posting. And this is less of a big deal than I think people realize, because even if they do post it on the job posting, it doesn't have to be true. You never know what they could have paid you, right? There's no easy way to get that information. And the government has the same problem when they police these things. In some regions, it's illegal for them to not post it or falsify it. But it's tricky, because how do you verify what someone would have been willing to pay someone? That's pretty hard. And I'm a former CEO. I know what it feels like to be on the other side of the table here. Very hard for them to verify that with any weight. So there's always a way around that for the employer. Some people argue that there always should be a way around that. Just like you have the freedom to work wherever you want, and you don't have to work anywhere if you don't want to. They have the freedom to hire whomever they want. Their survival depends on it. But I mean, whichever way you look at this, right? In the end, you will never know exactly what the real salary range was. There could be an official range, and then there could be the real range that they don't actually write down or disclose in any way. It's just in here, right? So these are some of the issues with that. The bottom line is that you are an individual. You don't have to work for anything that doesn't make sense to you, right? You're not a slave. Nobody can force you to work for something that doesn't make sense. You take the best option available. The trick is to get good options, right? We're going to talk about that in a moment. Okay, what are some other pain points here? There's different things that people complain about. Some people complain about long, cumbersome interview processes. This has always been the case, especially with big companies. It's a very transparent and easy way for people to disconnect themselves from the responsibility of making a call on something, right? They have to hire someone. Nobody wants to be the one that says, I'm making the call, we're hiring this person, because if that person doesn't work out, in certain environments, it's a very cover your ass type environment, and they're fearful as hell that they could be blamed if that person doesn't work out, right? So what they do is they involve everyone in the decision, and then nobody can come back to them and say, it's your fault that person, you made the wrong call. They can always say, hey, everybody else signed off on it. You were all there. Nobody said no. So you can't pin this on me, right? That's a very transparent trick. And the job seeker ends up being the loser, because now they're doing 4 or 5 rounds of interviews, getting you to talk to everybody and their brother's dog and the dog's vet, right? You're doing the same interview essentially over and over and over with different people, right? That's what they're doing internally. It's all self-serving, so that's a common complaint. And I'm almost done, I promise. Scout's honor. Ghosting. Everybody loves to be ghosted, right? Talking to a lot of recruiters is a incredibly respectful experience. They treat you with such respect. And they always do what they say, right? So you can be assured that you're dealing with getting the best possible treatment when you deal with these people. So ghosting is really wonderful. It's their language of saying no. Okay, I'm telling you right now, this is how these people communicate. That's what a no looks like. It's when they suddenly drop off the face of the planet. They don't return your communication. Or they do, but they're very vague and non-committal, right? That's what a no looks like, or at least no for now. That's what it looks like. That's what it sounds like. Okay, so I'm going to translate that bullshit behavior into English. It's a no. Now listen. This doesn't matter to you, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be moving forward regardless of what the hell these people are doing. If they call you for an interview, great. I hope it works out. But in the meantime, you're not sitting by the phone waiting for them. You're going to be moving forward, pursuing other opportunities, applying to other jobs, connecting with other people, because you're on a mission, and the mission is job search. Okay? If these people want to consider you, great, but regardless of anything that's happening with them, you're moving forward. The more options you have, the more power you have, the more likelihood you're going to turn out. It's going to end up for you on top. Okay? We already talked about networking. Nobody likes networking. Network people know, oh yeah, there's more jobs than what's posted, but they have no idea what to do about it. That's what I've been talking about for years. And a lot of people accuse me of making it up. That's why I go on ChatGPT and saying like, no, this is real. You can do this. Anyway, yeah, just some confusion as to like, okay, I need to get connections. No, you don't. You need to reach out to people. That's a different thing. You sit at home. If you have a computer or you got a tablet or you got a phone, you get on that internet-enabled device and you start sending out messages. Now, if you do it in a certain way, it can be extremely effective. If you follow protocol, it goes to the right people and you say the right thing. It can open all kinds of doors for you. If you have no clue what you're doing, you don't know who to talk to, you don't know what to say, you don't know how to say it, it's probably going to fail. So learn all you can about what to do. Okay, that's the purpose of my channel, is to help people with this. And the last pain point I think I'm going to talk about is that AI has thrown a spanner into the mix. It's created like AI bots and like assistants. So like they could take your resume, reformat it, rewrite it, and then blast it out, like submit it to all these jobs for you. Great. The problem with that is that you've got this, for want of better words, spam flood that's saturated a lot of jobs because so many bots and things are applying to them that now, instead of being one of 500 people, you're like one of 1,500 people applying for the job. Because they're just applying for everything and anything. So that's really muddying the waters. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm clearing my throat. I told you, I need my absinthe dribble glass. Little sugar cube, a couple of drops of laudanum, what you would need to do a live stream. Yeah, so that's the deal. Let's get to you guys here. There's a lot of questions here. Sorry for the delay. Let's see here. Greg says, what's the best way to get through all this issues in the current job market? Well, the hidden job market, in a couple of words, okay? That's where all the action is. That's where it always has been. And if you're an introvert, if you're a technical person, congratulations, you're just like me. I'm an introvert. I have a degree in engineering. I'm a technical person. You can do this. This is so much easier than what you would think it would be. It's a matter of formatting little messages and sending them to people, right? That results in job interviews, that results in informational interviews, right? And then all you got to know is the absolute basics of how to talk to somebody, how to have a conversation with somebody. Pretty damn simple. A lot of technical people, you've already learned things that they're like so far ahead of like this stuff. This is like absolute child's play compared to some of the things you already know. So it's just that the thing is, nobody's ever taught you this. Not in high school, not in university, not in life, That's the reason why you're here and you don't know how people usually get hired. They get hired through networking, right? You kind of feel left out of it. It's actually pretty damn easy to do once someone draws you a map. Now, look, I talk about it. I can answer individual questions about pieces of it. There's a lot to it. I can't just explain the whole thing in 5 minutes. If you do want the whole shebang, okay, check out that course. Put all of it in that course. It's linked in the description box below. So if you just want me to shut the hell up and start laying it all down for your beginning and end, it's going to take several hours. Okay, it's in that course. Dill Pickle says, in your opinion, what are some of the major factors that are making the job market so difficult? Well, I ran through them. Those are the common complaints that people make. Rightly or wrongly, those are the common complaints. A couple of them, I think, are kind of moot. It doesn't matter, because that doesn't affect what you should be doing anyway. You know what I mean? But those are certainly the common complaints. Every job I've got in the last 20 years or so, for what that's worth, has been on the hidden job market. I've taught students that are in their early 20s to get jobs on the hidden job market, like in university. as part of business programs. I taught students how to do this stuff. They went out and did it. So, I mean, I've walked the talk. I've done this stuff. That's how you get jobs. That's how you've always gotten jobs, and that's how it's going to be working in the foreseeable future. Okay, so you bypass all this standard horse shit, which, I'm trying to get, every year I'm getting further and further out of CEO mode and, behaving a bit more like this. Anyway, I'm still not quite there yet. You bypass all this stuff with job postings and recruiters and job interviews and all this crap, and you talk right to the people who are initiating the jobs, which are the managers. And the higher the manager, the better, because they have the more power. By definition, you need to talk to people that are above your level. They're the ones that can help you. There's no point in talking to somebody that's at the same level you are. They can't do anything for you. You got to go to people above you, right? There are people that are 1, 2, 3 levels above you. They have the power to hire you on the spot. And sometimes they do. I've had students that were hired on the spot when they were like going and talking to, doing informational interviews with companies and things like this. So you bypass all this crap, the standard HR recruitment and selection process, and you go right to the decision makers. Synapse says, do you make your intention of job seeking clear in the first message or email when you reach out? Do email work more effective than LinkedIn? No, email is less effective than LinkedIn because email is a hotbed for spam, right? Now, there is crap on LinkedIn too, definitely, but emails are the most easiest thing to ignore. I understand why people want to send emails. They're the easiest thing. You don't have to talk to anyone. You don't have to see anyone, Unfortunately, the flip side of that is they're the easiest thing in the world to ignore or delete, right? What would you do if you got an email from someone you don't know that starts by talking all about them and is trying to get you to do something for them? What conclusion would you derive? Well, you're probably going to assume this is some form of spam because that's the format that it always takes. Hey, let me tell you about this thing here you should be interested in, and now I need you to go and do this for me, right? What does that sound like to you? Sounds like spam, so you delete it, block sender, right? That's the problem with email, right? Now, LinkedIn works a lot better because first of all, if nothing else, if you get a message from somebody, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to go click on their profile. Who is this person? Right? That's the first thing you're going to do. Now, if your profile looks like crap, your photo is missing, or your photo is like there's 4 people in the frame, they're all drunk, they're partying, right? It doesn't look very professional, right? So you make sure you have a professional profile. Like, I'm not talking about paying any money. I'm talking about like just what you've chosen to put there looks above board, which it should be. Right? You take a cell phone or whatever, you take just a headshot of like, your head, maybe your shoulders, put that there and then look agreeable. For God's sake, look agreeable. I've seen people that, their photo on LinkedIn, they're like, they're like, they look mean or they look like, afraid or whatever. It's like, no, you want to look approachable. You want to look like someone they would want to work with. Don't look like you're about to rip somebody's head off. That usually doesn't go down very well. Try and force a smile if you possibly can, like this. I mean, I'm not exactly a fashion model. I could be, but I'm not. If they had like a sort of CEO runway type magazine, I'd probably get on there, but it's nothing to speak of. Do like a nice like headshot. You're agreeable. And then your tagline, like who you are. Who do you want to be to them? You could be a job seeker, or you could be a professional, whatever it is you do, or you could be a student, or you could be someone who's looking to change careers. So you could put the name of the career you want to move to. You say aspiring, blah, 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 right? Who do you want to be to that person? Right? Let's start with that. Do you want to be the identity of your last job? For some people, that's appropriate. For others, not so much, right? So you got to fix things up and you got to present yourself properly. And if you do, opportunities start coming your way. Okay, so where were we here? There was, this was Synapse. Do you make it? Now, to answer your question, the answer is a very clear yes and no, because it is possible to do networking activity where you're saying, I'm looking for a job. I'm actively looking right now. Are you hiring? Right? There's other ways where you don't lead with that. In fact, ways like informational interviews where you intentionally do not say that, because that kills it. You don't want them to think that you're looking for a job. You want them to think, hey, I'm just trying to learn all I can about this industry. I understand that, you are in this role. I think that's fantastic. I would love to get your opinion on, the industry or this particular thing. Would you be able to spare me, 15 minutes of your time? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Now, if that person knows that you're looking for a job, that kind of kills it, right? But under normal circumstances, they don't suspect you're trying to get something out of them. They'd say, yeah, that's very flattering. Sure. Yeah, you can come to my office. We could talk about it, things like that. Right? There's indirect ways of doing this are extremely effective. Okay, so yes and no. Some methods use one, other methods use the other, and they're both equally effective. 223 says, if a candidate failed an interview, why do you think an HR recruiter will keep him on the bench? I've been waiting for outcome of an interview for 2 weeks now. I know favorable. Well, because it's work to have to contact you and then deliver bad news to you. They can either do it very quickly without putting any thought into it, in which case it will be blunt and you will probably get angry hearing this, or they put more time into it, which is extra work for them, and it reduces the likelihood you'll have a bad reaction and throw it back in their face. But it's still unpleasant, right? They also feel like a heel because they're delivering bad news. That's never fun. Now imagine their role. They post a job for a living. They post multiple jobs a day for a living. Each job gets hundreds of candidates. Okay, let's say they get, I'll be conservative, let's say they get 500 candidates that apply for each job. Okay, that's what? Let's say 2 jobs a day is what they pose. Okay, I'm being conservative. So that's 499 people times 2 that get a no. So that's nearly 1,000 people you got to get back to with a no in some way, shape, or form. Now, some people use automated response, which are lovely and personal. Other people, they just don't do anything because that's the language that they use that means no. So it's like when someone says, I'll get back to you. That's code for I will never get back to you. How many times, if you're an extroverts know this. You go and you hang out with people and they go, yeah, we should totally do something. Yeah, I'll give you a call Friday. You're not going to hear from them on Friday. You're not going to hear from them ever. It's just talk, That's the international language of no. You know what I mean? It's like the international language of dance. It's universal, So unfortunately, if no one ever tells you this, and you're like me, you're an introvert, you're less intuitive, you're less tuned into social cues naturally, you may not pick this up. But that's what's going on. They shy away from it because it's unpleasant. So that's just how they operate. That's what a lot of protocol derives from. Right now, listen, the bottom line is that just because you haven't heard from someone for 2 weeks, it doesn't necessarily mean no. There could be a million other reasons. The recruiter went off on vacation. Maybe there was some transition and, they lost your contact information or they forgot to get back to you. It was an oversight, right? I was doing a series of interviews many years ago for a job I eventually did get, But they dropped off the face of the planet for like a couple of weeks. I was like, what the hell's going on? So I called the company. It turns out the recruiter had been let go. But I talked to their boss. Their boss said, it's actually good that you contacted me because I did want to talk to you again. And they gave me more interviews. And then I got it eventually. It was a bad company. It didn't work out. Like I worked there for like 18 months, but it sucked. Anyway, so anything can be the reason, right? But it's most likely a no. When it's a yes, they tend to move very quickly as a general rule. That's the unfortunate reality. So if they're not moving quick, then the likelihood is that it's a no, but you don't know for sure. So here's what you do. You forget about it as much as is humanly possible, and you focus your attentions on moving forward. Apply for more jobs, do more networking, get more opportunities, get more options, get interviews lined up, get offers in your back pocket. That's what you do. You don't sit and wait for these clowns to get their act together. They don't want to. They don't want to communicate with you clearly. Fine, screw them. I hope that they still want to talk to you, and I hope that they're going to give you something. And if they contact you, great. But in the meantime, you move on. You do you. That's the idea. Okay? 223. You are a valuable, upright, decent person that deserves to be treated with respect. You are going to do well, and you don't have to bow to these people. Okay? You're going to find a place and a hiring manager that appreciates you for your abilities, and they're going to pick you. Right? So that's what you focus on, finding that person. Crocodile says, hi, Jeff. Okay. What do you suggest I do to mitigate inflation? The pay stays the same for 2 to 3 years, but the price of everything will constantly go up. The world is changing and it's affecting the market. Well, that's an economic discussion. I mean, like, what do you mean? Like, how do I mitigate inflation? I mean, there's some things you can do, but I'm not going to get into it here because that's nothing to do with job search. Yes, inflation continues. Currency devalues. That's a fact of life. It's been on a steady trend of doing that for the last 250 years at least. So, you could try and make more money. There you go. People don't like that answer because it's hard, but it's true. So the more value you can generate for people, that's something you pursue. You know what I mean? That's the obvious answer to that. 223 says, I'd quickly also not favored candidates too. So why the wait? Okay, well, no problem. I kind of answered that as part of my last thing. I think it's disrespectful. It is. It is disrespectful. You're absolutely correct. They think that that's an appropriate response. But in their defense, to a degree, they also believe that anyone doing job search will eventually figure this out. So they don't have to give you an explicit no, because they don't want to. You will eventually see a pattern. And sooner or later, you'll connect the dots and put 2 and 2 together and go, I see, that's a no. Gotcha. Message received. Crocodile Croc says, I get one or no reply when I apply to 100 job posts that claim to be remote. Are they even hiring people from abroad? Well, I can't answer that. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't know. It depends what you're applying to. Getting one or no reply to 100 job posts, that's actually not too bad. I think a lot of people are not getting that, you know? Is that whiskey to clear your throat? Oh, if only it was. But no, it would be just plain stupid to get hammered and go on the air, right? And I would never do that. And this isn't vodka either. See, I think if you poured vodka into a glass this big, it would probably kill you. At least it would kill me. Also thinking whiskey. No, actually, to be honest with you, it was sugar-free Red Bull. That's what I drink. That's my vice. I drink too much sugar-free Red Bull. I do it because I'm going live and I want to, not be like, talking to people like this the whole time. Monty Python did a skit about that, just going on and on. It's painful. It's painful to listen to somebody do that. So, and I've seen people do that on YouTube with live streams, just this low energy level. There's like 2 people watching them, and those people are probably asleep or dead. So, you know what I mean? You got to try and at least bring a little bit of energy. And let's face it, this topic is just so interesting that how could you not? Crocodile says, how do you beat AI spam applications? Do we try other ways to get to hiring managers, or online job applications are still viable? Well, most applications don't go to hiring managers. Most of the time they go to recruiters, right? That's 2 different roles. And they don't even go to the recruiter. They go to an applicant tracking system, that like a computer that receives your applicant, and then it application, and then it reads it, and then it ranks it, and then it does this to all the applications, and then it only presents the top ranking handful to the recruiter, right? So that's what they're doing. Now, to answer your question, how do you beat this? It's simple. You collectively tell these people and their system to F off, because it's a law of diminishing returns. It's not worth your time. The hidden job market is where the real action is. That's where the real jobs are. Where you don't have 1,000 people applying for a job, you have maybe 2 applying for a job, right? And that's what you focus on. Okay? You don't play this game. It's not worth playing for most people. The only people playing this game are workers, and even most workers are not playing this game. Managers are not playing this game. If you ever want to get a management job, they do not go through this kind of crap. Okay, they don't go through web forms that say, what are your salary expectations? What is your greatest weakness? They don't do that stuff. They don't go to job interviews where some recruiter who knows absolutely nothing about the job they're hiring for says, so tell me about yourself. It's like they don't do that stuff, right? Instead, you're doing a less structured, casual, 2-way conversation with a decision maker. And then that goes on and on and on. Okay? It's a lot less structured than that. That's how you actually get to know somebody. Okay, so you don't win at this game. This is not a game not worth playing. You could take the same effort, you could put it into focusing on the hidden job market through things like direct outreach and informational interviews. Just those 2 alone will be more effective than applying for posted jobs, if you do them right. 223 says, where do you find those people when trying to find a job in the hidden job market? Search for companies in your area. Okay, I have done a video. It's linked below in the in the description box under this live stream. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Okay, go watch that video, because I don't talk about it. I do it. You see my desktop as I'm doing all the searches, and I'm finding all the employers, and I'm finding all the individuals, and I do it. Okay. That's an example of the type of thing you can do. And that answers your question. Okay, so go watch that video. I made it for the purpose of people seeing that. If you want more information, okay, you want to go beyond that, you want to see what stuff you can do and why it works that way and how it works, okay, go and get that course. Okay, my Get Hired course. All my information, all my advice in one place. Link in the description box below. And I've also made videos that describe the course, how it works, what you get, in an effort to be as transparent as possible. They're all also linked below in the description box, so check that out. How to beat AI spam applications. Do we try other ways to get the hiring managers? 223 views. How would I contact those companies? Call, email, LinkedIn? Am I talking about the hinge job market? Look, anytime that there is a job that exists, but they don't post it publicly, that's by definition the hidden job market. The job is hidden. It's not posted publicly. The way you post it publicly is you could do it on the internet with the job posting, or you could have help wanted sign in the window. That's displaying publicly, advertising publicly, we're hiring, right? The moment they don't do that, but there's still a job, you can't find out about it on the outside. It's a hidden job, right? The job might only exist in the head of the hiring manager. They go, oh, there's too much work for us to do. This team that I run, we're swamped. We need to hire 2 more people for our team to cope with all this work. I got to get around to that. But the problem is that my job is to run this team and get this work done. Hiring people is a sideshow. That's not really the core part of my job. I don't work in the HR department. I deal with this work. That's what I do. I'm the authority and I'm running this team. We all deal with this, right? I hate having to hire people. It takes me away from the work I actually get paid for, So I just want a qualified person, and I want them for as little effort and time as possible. I just want to get them hired, get them onboarded, and then we can solve this problem, right? That's what they're thinking. The last thing they want to do is they're going to be sorting through candidates, sending them resumes, right? So that's a typical hiring manager. They're a manager of some department running a team in an organization, okay? The job might only exist in their head. They certainly haven't published it out in the public domain yet, right? Now, the thing is, most good jobs, they're very desirable, right? So imagine if the boss says, oh, we got to hire 1 more person for our team. And they say this to the team members. The team members say, hey, boss, when are you going to get us some help? You keep running this place on overtime. We keep taking the overtime, but, this is getting really grueling. When are you going to get some help? We need some permanent additions to this team to take the load off. The boss says, yeah, I got to get around to that. The team knows that there's a vacancy now too. There's an opportunity. They want to hire someone. Okay? So if it's a desirable job that pays well, a lot of the team members will come to the boss. They'll say, hey, listen, I understand that you're hiring for some of these positions, more positions like mine. Excuse me. Well, listen, I got a brother or a cousin or a friend or a former coworker that would be perfect for this. I've worked with them. They're good. Shall I tell them to send you their information or their resume or whatever? And if you were the boss, what would you do? You're worked pretty hard. This is all a sideshow. What would you say? You'd be like, sure, yeah, okay. If you know them, you're basically staking your personal reputation with me on this assertion that this person is good. So if I interview them because you said they were good and they turn out to be horrible, then I'm never going to trust you again. That's for damn sure. I'm not going to listen to your recommendations if, you're going to make a really bad recommendation. So this carries weight. I've worked with you for a few years. I know you're a good person. I trust you. So if you're telling me that I should talk to this person, I'll talk to him. I'll give him a chance. I'm not going to hire them because you tell me, but I'll at least give them a chance, If you're telling me I should do this because I respect you. I don't know who they are, but I respect you. Right now, if they work out, the boss is most likely going to go, okay, when can you start? We need help. You can, I think you can do this. You clearly know what you're doing. I seem to get along well with you. When can you start? That's how a lot of things work. Why go and spend money and time talking to a recruiter, going to get a recruiter, internal or external, like a recruiter who works for the company or an external recruiter, because the company's small, they don't employ a full-time recruiter. But why would you then spend money on a full-time recruiter and say okay, now we got to figure out what the job posting is going to say. We got to think through all the details, all the background. What do you want? What do you not want? Right? Okay, now it's going to be several weeks. I got to write this up, post it. I got to filter candidates. I got to do screening calls. I got to coordinate job interviews. You got to sit in rounds and rounds of job interviews, right, with me to interview some of these candidates We're going to talk about it. You know, I'm going to make recommendations. I'm going to write them up, right? We got to do background checks. We got to check references, you know, this sort of thing. And then you make the call, and then I employ them and onboard them and blah, blah, blah. The hiring manager thinking is like, good God, I don't have time for that. So if I can get a candidate that's probably going to work out rather than some stranger that's been through that horrible process, I'm going to take that. That's why the hidden job market's a thing. You get a candidate that's even more likely to work out than somebody off the street because someone you trust recommended them, right? And it's quicker, cheaper, and it's less work for the hiring manager who's already overworked. Okay, now, granted, this is one scenario, one example, but that kind of thing happens a lot more than you think, right? So that's why the hidden job market is a thing. Now, imagine if you could like send a message to the hiring manager right when they realize like, okay, I got to hire someone, but God damn, I don't have the time, you know? I don't want to think about sitting in rounds of job interview on top of my job. Your message lands in their lap. It says like, hey, you know, I know your company. I know you guys do really good work. I live close by. I'm a fully qualified whatever. I'd love to work for you. If ever you're looking, let me know, you know? Boss thinks, hey, you know, let's give this person a chance. You know, if they work out, then we can just fast track this and I could get on with my life, right? That's the idea. So that's why things like direct outreach work. You know, you don't get hired because you're the most qualified person on the face of the planet. You don't get hired because, you know somebody's dad or their dad knows your dad and, you know, they used to drink kegs together and talk business. You get hired because you're the first one or the only one in line. That's why you get hired, because you showed up. That's the principle behind this. Right? So that's a big reason why this is effective, okay? But I mean, there's many things out there. There's many mechanisms. This is one, right? But that's why things like direct outreach are effective. Okay, that's the reason why they would pick you, because it's so much easier for them when you see what their perspective is. Okay, anyway, rant over. Let's see. Where was I here? Something about whiskey, spam, AI, you know, the usual, right? You know, my mother, foreigners, you know, the usual topics of conversations that people have among friends. A certain unnamed U.S. president. Where do you find those people trying to find a job in the hidden market? Okay, we talked about that. How would I contact those companies? Call, email, LinkedIn, any or all. Personally, I favor LinkedIn. That's what's worked for me, and that's what I've taught in school. There are certain advantages of that. This is moving here. Okay. How to decide when to make job-seeking intention clear or to conduct informational interview. How about direct phone call? Would it be too intrusive? No. Well, it depends. It depends. Some people like to do a lot of communication over the phone. You can. If you're not comfortable with that, more people, especially this current generation, as I understand it, people are absolutely just shit scared to pick up a phone, right? They don't know what to say. They get all nervous, you know. So I imagine there's less people that are comfortable doing that now. But no, you don't have to pick up a phone. You don't have to talk to anyone in person if you don't want to. It's all remotely. Now, I recommend LinkedIn to initiate meetings or like interviews, like the equivalent of a job interview. I recommend things like LinkedIn. I recommend you do it remotely. But there's many different ways. I said this about an hour ago. I've done a video called How I'd Get a Job, and it's 46 minutes long or 45 minutes long, and I go through 11 different methods of getting a job, including a couple where you show up in person. Okay? Now, you don't have to do all 11, of course, but a good job search campaign has 2, maybe 3 that you're doing seriously, like 2 or 3 methods. So one could be posted jobs. You don't have to completely ignore it if you don't want to, but you're also doing one or two other things on the hidden job market. That's going to be the real secret weapon. Okay. And to answer your question, there are methods that involve any and all of those. Okay. So you can do stuff in person, you can do stuff on the phone, but a lot of them I'd recommend you do remotely. Especially if you're an introvert, that might be more comfortable to you. You can still make it work. That's how I've done stuff. That's what I teach in that course, by the way. You know, it's geared towards introverts. So like, that's the thing. You don't have to go to any wine and cheese parties and schmooze with people. That's not the approach we're taking here. Although if you're an extrovert, that is a vector you can go down, but I don't cover that. And it's not true intrusive to do a phone call, especially like a voicemail. You call after hours, you say, hey, you know, my name is X, just following up to see if you received the envelope that I left for you at the front desk. You know, I just want you to know that if you're ever looking for a fully qualified whatever, you know, plumber, whatever it is that you do, you know, I just want you to know I live close by. I'm a fully qualified plumber. I specialize in this area. If ever you're looking for that, please give me a call. I would love to work for you or work with you. Have yourself a great day. You know, something like that. There's absolutely nothing intrusive about doing that, especially if you do it in the form of like leaving a message. You know, if you're too nervous to talk to someone directly. By the way, that's pretty much exactly what you would say to their face, you know, or if they were on the other end of the phone, you say the exact same thing. But, you know, if you're nervous about that, that's fine. Ah, it's Bill, my bad. Yeah, don't worry about it. I've been called a lot worse in my day, and it won't be the last thing I'm called, right? Just act unapologetic and then just double down. Just, hey, Jeff, it's good to see you again. So how's the wife? How's the kids? Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, just double down. You know, never admit you're wrong. And then you'll get to the point where people just stop correcting you. And that's where you're home free, you know? McLevin says, do you think it's harder to get interviews for remote jobs? Do you think there would be less trust for applicants? There's never a lot of trust when you're dealing with the posted job market. That's the thing. The whole process is riddled with mistrust. You know, I don't know. I don't fully understand why, but it just is. It's because they know that you're there because they posted a job. They said, you know, we have a job. It pays money. Right? And you get a lot of people, hey, I want money. So can you give me this supposed job you have? Like, they're not interested in doing the job itself. They just want the money, right? So that's, I think, the root of a lot of the mistrust, because after that point, they just assume you'll say anything to get like the money, right? Even when you have absolutely no interest whatsoever in doing the job. Do you think there would be less trust for applicants? I don't know about the remote job thing, possibly, but then again, I can't answer to all the paranoid recruiters out there. It depends on the details, possibly. Winston Cornwallis. That's an awesome name, and I mean that sincerely. That sounds vaguely familiar, actually. I think you've been on here before. Or it seems like you've been on there before. Question. There is a lot of competition in the USA. As you know, it is the greatest country on earth. I don't know that, but whatever. So I want to find out from you, how is the job market in Canada? Well, you can go look that up. Seeing as though you don't know how to do that and you think that this is the way to get that information, I'll let you to figure that out on your own. Hyper Hippie Hippo Hopper. That's awesome. Says, do recruiters still poach employees from seeing public CVs on LinkedIn? I'm not sure. I wouldn't count on that if that's like, you know, the crux of your job search campaign. But, you I have no idea if they're still doing that. I mean, I got hired like in 2009, something like that, or I got invited to a job interview because I had my resume up. I think it was on Monster. This is like back in the day. I was using Monster or something on. And are they still around? They're probably not around anymore. But my resume was up apparently from like some other previous thing I guess I'd done or something. And they saw it and they said, come down to an interview for this. I said, okay, fine, whatever. I didn't actually apply for it. And I don't see why you would call it poaching. You know what I mean? Like, people can work where they want. You know what I mean? People can decide for themselves what they do. So if someone approaches you and says, hey, are you interested in this opportunity? I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. The only time I've seen where that's kind of frowned upon a little is where you have associations for an industry. And as part and parcel of being part of the industry association, you agree to certain things. And one of them is that you will not try and actively recruit your competitors' employees. That's one thing I've seen where, like, you want to be part of the industry association, you have to agree to that. So you can't actually approach any of their employees that are currently employed with them and make them an offer. Like, and say, look, why don't you come work for us? I have encountered that. Cool. We got 20 people here. Let me know if you guys have any questions. In the meantime, check out this course. This is the course that's probably of most interest to people here. All my advice, all in one place. Very popular course. Everything you need to know to get hired in the posted job market, everything you need to know to get hired in the hidden job market. So, yeah, check that out. And I've done a video on it that explains how it works, what you get, and answers frequently asked questions, stuff like that. So there you go. It's linked in the description box below this live stream. We'll give it a couple of minutes, see if there's any more questions. YouTube and its mute button. That's one of the things that I don't really like about YouTube. Okay, let's see here. Okay, we got more stuff. Let's see, where does it begin? Do recruiters poach employees? Okay, Greg says, through LinkedIn, do we message a person in the targeted company if we have list of companies in mind? I have a video linked to everybody who's asking me specific questions about, like, how to do direct outreach and stuff like that. There's a video linked below in the description box of this live stream. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. And what I do in that video is I walk you through, like, I actually do it. I don't talk about it, I do it. So you could see my desktop, you could see me open Google Maps and LinkedIn and do various things. Check that out, okay? That can answer a lot of your questions. If you want to go deeper than that and you want to know why I'm doing one thing instead of another thing, because there's actually a method behind it, check out the Get Hired course. Okay. Um, McLovin's talking to Synapse. Mel says, I turned down a job for one that seemed better, but now I want to do the job I turned down. How can I convince the area manager to give me a chance after turning them down? Well, you could talk to them and you could say, listen, I did say this and I stood behind that at the time, but on reflection, I've learned a couple of things about what you guys are doing. I've realized a few things. You're actually a bigger operation than I thought, better operation. Insert whatever good thing about them that, that they're doing better than what you thought they were. And now, on balance, I actually see the value of doing that option. So I'm wondering if the door's closed on that or if there's still a chance that's still on the table. Something like that, right? Things have changed. I didn't realize you guys were that big. I didn't realize you had these opportunities. Now that I see that, I'm wondering if that's still possible. And then just see what they say. I would go directly to the person. I would do it in person if possible. See if they'll still meet you. That's usually like an indication that there's an opportunity. If they're like totally closed, the ship has sailed, they probably won't entertain a meeting. You know what I'm saying? You could do that if it's important, if it's an important thing. Vilify Exile X. So direct outreach can be done through emailing? Maybe. I haven't tried it over email. I would not want to try it over email because email is a lot worse of a way to communicate than through a LinkedIn communication. And then in person. I favor setting things up over LinkedIn, like getting meetings and stuff and interviews and all that, and then doing it in person. If they're willing to give you a meeting, like especially when, like what I found over the years is that, people can, if you want to talk to somebody, they can agree to you coming to their office. The problem with that is that it's very, what's the word? There's not a lot of sacrifice on their part. They're going to be in their office anyway. You know what I mean? Whether you drop by or not really doesn't have much to do with them. But what I recommend when I do informational interviews, and I always have, is to say, we should do it in some third location that's like a neutral location. So maybe a Starbucks or something near to where they work. Now, if they're unwilling to do that, that signals that they're really not that crazy about talking to you, right? So you can kind of get that signal and it's like, okay, fair enough. And what I did personally and what I've recommended to people is I recommend you would make that parameter. Because if they're not interested to really talk to you in the first place, then why do this? It's probably not going to have a positive outcome anyway. So it serves no purpose. You only want to talk to people that are genuinely interested in talking to you. You know what I mean? So that's why I suggest a third-party location, like a Starbucks. Starbucks are great, by the way, for that kind of thing. They always have been. That kind of environment. And they have them everywhere. So a place that's maybe closer to them, like it's nearby them, but they have to get out of their damn building and go a few blocks. Now, if they can't do that, then, that says something. That's probably not worth doing. So if they are willing to do it, then it's like there's a lot of potential. They actually genuinely want to talk to you, which is good. You want them to care about this, or else what the hell's the point? So that's kind of part of it. At least for me, that's how I always did it. This feed keeps moving on me. Every time I come back to it, it's like it's moved. So sorry about this. Just give me a moment here. Okay, emailing. I was going to ask because a lot of people need active. A lot of the people I need to contact aren't active on LinkedIn as such. Okay, well, you can contact them whatever way you want, but what you want to get from them doesn't change regardless of the channel you use. Job Seeker says the Get Hired course is lifetime access for a one-time payment, right? Is all the information still relevant for 2026? Yes, it is. The one thing I don't cover in this course that I was thinking about adding was customizing, like the part that talks about posted jobs, customizing your resume using AI. That's not in there. Now, the thing I'm trying to push people towards is the hidden job market, so it's kind of irrelevant. The other thing about what you do technically to customize your resume to with AI is changing quite quickly. That's the problem, you know? So I have done multiple videos of that over the last couple of years, kind of updating as I go, right? That's the one little thing that isn't in there, but it really is a very minor thing in the grand scheme of things. Everything else is absolutely relevant to today. And yes, you are right about the rest of that. Mel says, I was told my offer would be in range of what I wanted, but HR decided to offer the minimum, which is a lot lower than I'm willing to do. It's an entry-level job. Can I still counter or walk? Of course you can still counter. You can do anything you want. You can tell them to F off. But listen, what they're doing is they're doing normal supplier behavior, right? They're going to try and lowball you, right? They're going to try and make it so that you work for the least amount of money you would ever possibly accept, right? That's what they're going to try and do. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get them to pay the most they ever would consider paying, right? So, you know, you have polar opposite incentives on this. So that's how it works. So that's why you kind of do a back and forth thing, right? You know, now the way this works in a nutshell, like just the quick version, because negotiation is very complicated. The quick version is this. If you need a job, you absolutely need a job, you know, you're unemployed, money's running out, you need a job. These people give you an offer, but they're lowballing you, okay? You can negotiate, but it's risky because, you know, you're going to be probably bluffing. You're going to be saying like, well, you know, if you don't give me this higher amount that I need, then I walk, right? No deal. And what they're most likely going to do is they're going to call your bluff. They're going to say, okay, well, you know, sorry, we don't pay that, right? So they're going to call your bluff. Now, the problem is if you're bluffing and you don't have an alternative option, you lose, right? So the way you succeed in things like this is you have more than one option. Now, hypothetically, just imagine what would happen if you had 2 job offers in your back pocket. This is one of them, but there's another one. Well, what it means is that you don't have to take crap from these people. If these people are offering 5 and you want 10, but you've got another job offer in your back pocket that's offering you 8, right? So you want 5, they're offering 5, the other guys are offering you 8, but you want 10, right? You know, now you've got some options. You can say like, look, you know, I need 10 or I walk. And you could do that as a tactic. You're willing to give something up if they can't make 10. So they say, yes, okay, fine, we'll give you 10. Or they call your bluff and they say, absolutely not. And you say, okay, goodbye. And then you go and work for 8 at the other place. You know, or they say no, and then you say, okay, goodbye. And then they go, wait, okay, come back. You know, they say, okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll pay you 8. And you say, no, 9. And they go, okay, fine, 9. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a tactic, right? You're willing to walk away. You're not going to accept anything, you know, that they dictate to you. So sometimes it works like that, right? But the thing that enables that is you having that second option, right? So maybe you don't have a job offer, a second job offer, but maybe you have 5 interviews lined up in the next 2 weeks. So like the odds are something might turn into an offer. You know, you can do things like that, right? You have other options other than a binary thing like unemployment or whatever the hell these people feel like paying you for this job. The more options you have, the more power you have, the more you don't have to take someone's deal, right? That's how these things work. So the goal should be to always be pursuing options, get as many as you can, as many things lined up as possible. That's what gives you power. You don't have to take what somebody is offering. You have other options. Okay. The Recce report. Monster is still around, not as popular, though personally I've never used Monster. Yeah, I don't know much about it. I don't really remember much about it. I haven't used it since. Synapse says, for information interview, when to reveal your intention of job seeking and how to do that properly. I fear that it might become quite awkward. No, it's not awkward. None of this stuff is awkward because it's all above board. The information stuff, look, I've said this in videos. Here's the general idea, okay? This is, I don't know what you call this. I covered this in that video here. I actually looked it up before, so it looks like I totally prepared this, but I didn't. But I was looking it up. This one, right? How to get a job. Look, it's 46 minutes, but I'm going through 11 methods of getting a job. Okay, and I'm saying what I would do. Okay, so I got that video, how I'd get a job. I don't think it's linked in the description box below. You'd have to search for it, but it's called, If I Were Jobless Today, Here's Exactly How I'd Get a Job, from me, the company's expert. So, informational interviews, the method I recommend, if you had to call it something, it would be informational interview with a delayed ask. Okay, so what that looks like is this. You reach out to someone who can help you. Now, what that's going to be is probably an executive manager in an employer that's near you in your hometown, that's in your industry, or they certainly employ people like you at their company, okay? In the past, when I've done this, I've only gone to the CEO, but I've done this with students, and sometimes we've gone to people below the CEO, like other executives. Okay, then what you do is you contact them, and there's like a template message, and it's something along the lines of, you know, I see that you are this. I think that's fantastic. I would love to get your expert opinion about, you know, where this industry is going, or something like that. If you could spare me 30 minutes of your time, I'd love to get your opinion on that. You know, thank you, goodbye, right? So something like that. And then what these people do is that it's a numbers game. So if your ratio is 10%, 20%, whatever it is, you send this to 100 people, you'll get that percentage of respondents, right, that say yes. Now, when I did this, it was a two-step process. The first thing I do is I send a message to get them to connect with me. And I only know this because I've said it so many times on this channel. The response rate for that I got was 30%. So this was CEOs. So I connected with CEOs in my hometown, people I didn't know, people who didn't know me, and it was a 30% connection rate. So for every 100 people who got this message, 100 CEOs, 30 would connect with me, right? Then of those 30, I would send a second message. Now that we're connected, I don't have to use InMail or anything weird like that. I can just send a message. And I would say, you know, I'd like to do I'd like to do an informational interview with you. Is that cool? And the response rate for that was something like 20%. So if you started off with 100 people, 30 connected to you, and then 20% of them responded favorably, that would be 12, right? So 12 people said yes to an informational interview. So you'd have 12 informational interviews with these people, with 12 CEOs you don't know, and then you go do them. Now, most of those didn't turn into consulting clients for me, because that's what why I was doing this. Maybe one would turn into a consulting client. So, you know, it's like a funnel, right? You're going down the funnel. So that was the idea. Now, let's say you get informational interviews, okay? What you want to do is get a job, right? So you do the informational interview. You're not there for a job. You don't make any mention of needing a job. As far as they're concerned, you're just trying to learn all you can about the industry, blah, blah, blah. You know, whereas you're getting their opinion. Where's it going? What does the future hold? What skills will be needed? Blah, 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 that kind of stuff. These people love to talk about that. Where do you see things going? Right? What do you think is going to be important? What's the winning strategy for this industry? What's it all going to be? What's it coming down to? Things like that. Then you go away for a couple of days. You end the meeting by saying, listen, this has been fantastic. I got your card. If I have any other questions, can I give you a call? Is that okay? Now, 99% of the time they say, sure, yeah, no problem. So you've got their card, you got their information, you've got an open invitation. You wait a few days, anything from 3 days to a week, or I wouldn't wait longer. And then you send them a message. You say, like, listen, I've been thinking about some of the stuff you said to me about where this is going and what's going to be important, and companies are going to need to do this or whatever. I think that's fascinating. I would love to work on that kind of stuff. If ever you guys decide to go in that direction, let me know, because I'd love to work with you on that. Something like this. Right? And then that's where the whole, let's see if I can get something from this comes out, right? It's really not that nefarious. It's being honest, obviously you're not going to do this to people that were totally off-putting and they said stuff that doesn't relate to you, as you don't want to be involved in, right? But that was the vector for informational interviews. And I say this in that video, that's kind of the thing I would recommend if you're using informational interviews as a way to get a job. The reason why you would do this is because they've met you, they know who you are. If you guys clicked as people, you had a really cool conversation together about, where this is going and, all that, your business that about, your industry. They think you're great. They think you're fantastic. Not only are you interested in hearing their thoughts about this, which, let's face it, how many times do you get that in your life? Somebody says, hey, I really think, what you do is interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how that works. How often do you get that? It's pretty flattering when you do. So they're already loving you. And then if you got along together, and it's not that you dominated the conversation, you let them do all the talking, but the stuff that you did say, you clearly know what's what when it comes to this stuff. So they can see, like, okay, you know what you're talking about here. You put all that together. If they do have opportunities there, you jump to the front of the line. So that's the idea. That's how that kind of method works. At least the way I recommend people do it. That's not the simplest method. That's one of the most involved methods. It's very labor intensive, but it's worth doing if you're particularly interested in that company. They would be a really good employer for you. They're like one of the clear contenders. Surfing slots. Hi, Bill. After working in finance, I would like to get a job with a mission and purpose now at an NGO or foundation in London, but they take so long to respond because there are fewer jobs around. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, you've got several different methods available to you. Just, try and possibly reach out to them. Maybe even some of the stuff we were talking about here, if that works for you. Mel says, if someone takes your MBA course and use it to apply for jobs, how can they explain they don't have an official MBA but fit the qualification? Yeah, because it's not intended for that. You're not doing it to get a fancy piece of paper to impress people with. You're doing it to get the knowledge, right? So, you have plenty of options available to give you an official accredited MBA. You've got a lot of stuff. I mean, you have to pay through the nose for it, but there are those options. What I'm doing is I'm offering an unaccredited MBA course that gives you all the same knowledge that you can get with, a 2-year brick and mortar university program for $100. And it's more flexible, and so you can work around your schedule. It doesn't require you to take time off your job, or work around a family. You can make it work for you. And also the added bonus is that, you don't have to take the entire thing equally. You can just focus in one area if that's all you're interested in, or you could skim the entire thing. These are things you don't get from a full-blown accredited brick and mortar program, right? Now, yes. So obviously that's not going to meet a lot of people's needs, but it does meet the needs of people like entrepreneurs, or people that are thinking of taking business, but they're not sure, or people that just want to understand how to make money, or how to manage money, or how to sell themselves, like as in getting a job. That's what you're doing. You're selling yourself. You're like, here's why you should pick me, and not these other candidates. You want to pick up some of those skills. It's also useful for people that are working in a job. Maybe they're a worker, but they want to move up into management. They want to climb the ladder. And so they want to tack on some of the skills that you need to move into management. Communication skills, financial skills, some of those things that you need to tack on to your technical skills to be able to do those roles. So this is a convenient, quick, and cheap way of doing it. So that's what it's for. So if you're wanting to take it to impress someone with a certificate, unfortunately, that's not really what it's about. You're right. It's probably not going to hold a lot of water because, it is unaccredited. The reason why it's unaccredited is because there's no evaluations. There's no assignments, no exams, no projects. That's intentional, because if you just want to skim the material, you can. You don't have to then do a whole ton of assignments on it to verify this. It may not be your goal to learn that area to that degree. The goal, the purpose is flexibility. So anyway, I'm not sure if that's kind of what you're looking for, but if it is, that's what it's about. Surfing Slots, your content is really helpful. Thank you. You're welcome, Surfing Slots. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you for being here. Synapse, I'm very grateful for your advices. I'm about to put them into practice tomorrow morning. Awesome. Okay, well, best of luck, Synapse. Cool. Yeah, we've gotten some pretty intelligent questions, and people have said some very nice things during the stream, so thank you. That's the reason why I do this stuff. I'm also on a little bit of a mission where it comes to the MBA stuff. I have a real chip on my shoulder of what they're doing in certain universities, certain schools. I feel it's an absolute unapologetic money grab for things like MBAs, because what they're teaching essentially something that's 95% of it is in the public domain. Like, nobody owns this information. It's like teaching high school math. Nobody owns it. You know what I mean? You could get books on it at Amazon. You could get books on it at the local bookstore. But these people are charging like $200,000, $300,000 US to like teach you some of this. It's ridiculous. Yes, you're getting certain other fringe benefits, but still not worth anywhere near that much. So I just have a bit of a chip on my shoulder. There's a lot of other schools where they advertise this. They claim that you're getting all kinds of networking opportunities and stuff, which you're not. And then they charge you 6 figures or even 5 figures is still way too much. So I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder because of that. That's the other motivation for coming out with this course in its existing form, because this knowledge should be accessible. And the thing is, not that we're going on about this forever or anything, but the thing is, I'm not the one personally teaching you the material. You're getting a reading list. You're getting the same textbooks they use in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program. Some of the most popular business textbooks that teach their respective subjects that are used in the English-speaking world. You're getting that book, and that's where you're learning the material. I provide videos that guide you through it, but you're getting the knowledge from the books. So that's why it's just as useful, because you're getting it from the same source. It's just that it's much more flexible and it's much cheaper. You don't have someone reading it to you in class. You read it yourself. But I mean, all that for like 1% of what some places are charging. So Anyway, that's the deal. I talk about entrepreneurship on Mondays. I do a live stream every week. And then I talk about higher level business stuff on Fridays. So that's where the MBA sort of fits into what I do on this channel. Anyway, if ever you were interested, now you know. Awesome. Okay, I think we're going to be winding this down. Thank you to everybody who participated. Check out my courses. I will just do very, very, very briefly. There's this for getting hired, right? We covered that. There's this that I just spent the last 5 minutes talking about, if you're interested. And then the third one I don't think we did mention, or I can't remember if we did, was this. This is if you want to improve your communication skills. So yes, it's called Write Like a Professional. So you're writing, but more than that, it's about how to respond to things, what to say, what to signal, that sort of stuff that makes you be perceived as someone who has a lot of potential, and certainly they can be promoted into a management type role. So if that's what you're going for, this can be of help to you, especially if you're like me, you're a technical introvert. A lot of these skills don't come naturally. You have to be taught how to do them, but you're certainly capable of doing them once you know how to do stuff and you practice. So check that out. All of these are linked in the description box under this live stream, and they've all got accompanying videos that explain the courses, what you get, how it works, and that kind of thing. So check those out. Mel says, thank you. I understand. I just don't like the traditional route and do better with self-learning. But when a job requires an MBA, but I have the same knowledge, I wondered how to show it. Yeah, and you're going to get a mix. Some people will accept it and others won't. It's just that simple. It depends on the industry. Some industries that are very formal, like banking, they are probably only going to accept accredited stuff. That's pretty clear. Other industries where it's not quite as formal, it's not quite as established, their culture is a bit different, they can accept that if you've demonstrated, that stuff in a role, right? So if you've been a manager before, or you've been a lead hand, or, I've done a video on like how you can bridge that gap between going from a worker to a manager. There's a bit of a gap there, like where you're overqualified to be a worker, but you're untried to be a manager. That's a real gap. I've done that. I think that was on my other channel, like on this one right here. I think the Company's Expert 2. I think that's where that is. So check that out. It's like one of the 2 or 3 most recent videos. Anyway, yes, that's definitely a real thing. But do your research. Contact people in that industry, in those roles, the ones that make the call and the ones that have been on the receiving end of that call. Talk to them, reach out to them, and get their personal anecdotes and story, and that will inform you what you can expect when it comes to this stuff. Okay, you could do that in about, you could take 3 days and do that. Okay? Okay, I will definitely check them out. Thanks a lot. Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. I'll be back on Friday. You take care. Best of luck. Take care.